Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving into one of philosophy's most intense, high-stakes showdowns. It's a story about friendship, the fear of death, and our really profound, often super complicated relationship with the state. And the whole thing takes place entirely inside a 399 BCE Athenian prison cell. This is where Socrates, the literal grandfather of Western philosophy, the guy who fundamentally shaped how we think about ethics, logic, and truth, is quietly waiting for his own execution. Okay, just put yourself in his shoes for a second. Imagine waking up knowing it is your very last week on Earth. You aren't sick, you aren't frail, your mind is actually sharper than ever, but you've been sentenced to die by a jury of your peers. And your grand crime? Simply asking way too many questions. Socrates was condemned for supposedly corrupting the youth of Athens. Essentially, they were killing him for encouraging the next generation to think differently, to question authority, and to critically examine the society they lived in. To really understand the ticking clock of this story, we have to look at the timeline. Usually, executions in ancient Athens happened pretty fast, but an annual religious delay meant Socrates actually sat in a dirt floor prison for a month, waiting for a sacred ship from the island of Delos to return. See, while that ship was away on a holy mission to honor the god Apollo, the city of Athens had to remain ritually clean. That meant absolutely no bloodshed, so no executions could take place until the whole festival was over. But the secret ship has finally been spotted off the coast. The religious amnesty is officially up, and his execution is locked in for tomorrow. Now picture the stark contrast between our two figures on this final morning. On one side, you have Crito. He's a wealthy aristocrat, a lifelong friend of Socrates, and he is incredibly anxious. He just bribed a guard to sneak into the cell before dawn. On the other side, you have Socrates. He's a poor philosopher, a guy who famously refused to ever charge money for his teaching. And right now, he's sleeping peacefully, literally like a baby, completely unbothered despite facing the executioner in exactly 24 hours. Section 1. Crito's Case for Escape. When Socrates naturally wakes up, Crito leans in and whispers that the escape route is fully planned out. The guards are paid off, a safe house is ready, and all Socrates has to do is simply walk out the door. This kicks off a massive dialectical duel, a rigorous back-and-forth debate meant to strip away all the emotion and find pure truth. Crito hits him with 4 really heavy, very human arguments. First, he fears for his own reputation. In the ancient Athenian honor culture, public reputation was literally everything. If your friends let you die when they had the money to save you, you were socially ruined. People would just see you as a cheap coward. Second, he insists the bribe money is ready and fully covered. Third, he begs Socrates not to orphan his sons and abandon his fatherly duty to educate them. And fourth, Crito argues that accepting a corrupt jury's sentence is a passive injustice, meaning Socrates would be playing right into the hands of his enemies. Honestly, most of us would run without looking back. But Socrates, he doesn't panic. Which brings us to Section 2, the expert versus the crowd. Instead of giving in to the anxiety, Socrates systematically dismantles Crito's arguments by asking logical questions. His first counterpoint is a brilliant analogy. He asks, if an athlete listens to a clueless, roaring stadium crowd instead of his dedicated, knowledgeable trainer, doesn't he ruin his body? Well, Crito has to agree. Similarly, Socrates argues, we absolutely have to ignore the panicked crowd of public opinion. He rejects moral relativism entirely, the idea that right and wrong just depend on popular opinion or whatever the majority thinks in the moment. We should only heed the expert on justice. If people think poorly of Crito because Socrates chose to stay, well, that's just the crowd's misunderstanding, not a moral failure on Crito's part. So the crucial takeaway here is this absolute moral baseline laid down by Socrates. One must never do wrong. Think about how radical that was back then. He is completely rejecting the ancient Greek eye for an eye standard, that old Homeric code where it was totally acceptable to harm your enemies if they harmed you first. Socrates argues that breaking the law to escape is an act of injustice. 2 wrongs simply do not make a right, even if the jury was completely wrong to sentence him in the first place. Section 3. The Voice of the Laws. Crito is still kind of struggling to see how running away into the night actually harms anyone. So to explain exactly how escaping causes real damage, Socrates does something amazing. He brilliantly personifies the state itself. He imagines bringing the very laws of Athens directly into the dirt floor prison cell to speak to them face to face. The laws look down at Socrates and ask if he intends to destroy them. This introduces the absolute core of the social contract theory, thousands of years before thinkers like Locke or Rousseau would ever write about it. The laws argue that a society simply cannot function if citizens only obey the court decisions they personally agree with. If everyone just opted out of the rules when things got tough, it would destroy the rule of law entirely, dragging the whole city down into anarchy. This foundational idea sets up three really powerful arguments the laws use to prove that an innocent man must obey even an unjust ruling. First up, the laws present the parent analogy. They argue that the state is the very condition of our existence. It was through these specific Athenian laws regarding marriage and family that Socrates' parents met, married, and conceived him. Because of that, a citizen's relationship to the government is a lot like a child to a parent. Can you imagine viewing your government as your literal parent today? Wild, right? But to Socrates, it meant you cannot strike back and destroy the state even if it punishes you unfairly. You really only have two choices. You must persuade it to change its mind, or you must obey. Next, they hit him with the education argument. Athens gave Socrates the bustling marketplace of ideas, unparalleled intellectual freedom, and physical protection. The laws point out that to soak up 70 years of these incredible benefits, only to run away the very moment things get difficult, is the ultimate height of ingratitude. For Socrates, acting with such staggering ingratitude towards a city that built his mind was just an unthinkable betrayal. The third, and honestly the most logically devastating point, is tacit consent. Because Socrates never left the city walls, never packed up and went to another colony, and even specifically refused the punishment of exile during his trial, he essentially entered into a silent, lifelong contract to abide by Athens' rules. He had 70 long years to observe the laws, evaluate the justice system, and leave if he disliked it. But he chose to stay. Section 4, the hypocrisy of exile. Having firmly established his strict moral duty to stay, Socrates then totally flips Crito's practical arguments upside down. He wants to show his friend the dark, humiliating reality of what running away actually looks like. If he flees, what really happens? The outcomes are a nightmare. First, his friends will be actively hunted by the state, likely losing their property and their citizenship. In well-governed neighboring cities like Thebes or Megara, he'll be viewed with deep suspicion as a dangerous lawbreaker, which effectively proves his Athenian jury right. In lawless regions like Thessaly, he'll be mocked as a beggar wandering around in sheepskins, selling his lifetime of philosophical integrity just to buy a few miserable, anxious years on the run. And his kids? They won't be raised by him anyway. They'll either be left behind in Athens without him, or dragged along to become stateless foreigners, completely robbed of their proud Athenian heritage. As this intense debate reaches its peak, the voice of the laws eventually fades. Socrates says this immense sense of duty is echoing in his head like the hypnotic, overwhelming flutes of religious mystics. This divine hum completely drowns out Crito's emotional pleas for survival. Crito, just entirely overwhelmed by the flawless depth of the reasoning, finally lowers his defenses and admits, "I have nothing to say, Socrates." And finally, Section 5, your ultimate moral choice. Now, this explainer isn't just about an execution from 2.5 millennia ago. It's a mirror held directly up to our modern lives, forcing us to ask where our ultimate loyalty lies when the institutions of our society behave unjustly. Are we loyal only to our personal survival or to the structural integrity of the community? It's absolutely fascinating that centuries later, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., while writing from a Birmingham jail in 1963, actually cited Socrates. He agreed with the ancient philosopher on one really profound, fundamental principle. If you are going to break an unjust law through civil disobedience, you must do so openly, lovingly, and with a total willingness to accept the penalty. You do this to maintain the ultimate respect for the concept of law itself. You cannot just run away into the night. By choosing to stay, Socrates proved that his principles were worth infinitely more than his physical life. And in doing so, he gained immortality through his legacy. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought. If you were sitting in that stone cell, staring at an open window to freedom on one side and a cup of deadly hemlock poison on the other, which would you choose?
Please like and subscribe.